So I know how difficult it can be when you're struggling with your thyroid, and sleep can become quite an issue. So I want to go over with you the connection with sleep and your thyroid function, and then give you some tips that can help you kind of get through that. So it is actually very common to have issues with sleep when you struggle with your thyroid, especially slow thyroid symptoms. So underactive thyroid like hypothyroidism, even Hashimoto's, very, very common to have sleep disruption. The hard part is that it can become a vicious cycle because you can actually lose sleep when you have an underactive thyroid, and your thyroid can actually get affected when we're not getting enough sleep. So they kind of feed off of each other. So also keep in mind that the thyroid is responsible for producing thyroid hormones to keep everything functioning normally, optimally. So it can throw a lot of things off. One thing that I hear commonly is a lot of people, when they have underactive thyroid, they'll actually get night sweats. Now, there can be connection, obviously, to like sex hormones, like estrogen, but some people might actually have night sweats just because of the thyroid not functioning properly. It's going to cause you to lay there wide awake at night. Also, an underactive thyroid can actually weaken your respiratory muscles, and that will decrease your lung function. So that will also cause things like sleep apnea. I see this very commonly as well. And then, of course, when we have an underactive thyroid, we get that wired but tired feeling a lot of times. And the reason is because that thyroid's so closely connected to your adrenal glands. So unfortunately, what can happen more often than not is that the thyroid and the adrenals, because they're so closely connected, when one's off, the other one's off. And so you end up being like exhausted all day long, and then nighttime comes and you're laying there wide awake and you cannot sleep. And a lot of times it's because now the adrenals are thrown off. So we have no melatonin, and we actually have too much cortisol. Remember, they're supposed to be opposite of each other. So at nighttime, melatonin goes up, cortisol goes down. That's why you sleep. And then in the morning to wake up, cortisol goes up, it wakes you up, and melatonin comes down. That's the normal circadian rhythm. And that can get very thrown off when we have an underactive thyroid. And then, of course, the less sleep we get, it will feed back to not making your thyroid function properly. Remember, nighttime is when our body rests and repair. We get a lot of thyroid hormone conversion. All kinds of stuff happen at nighttime. And if we're not getting sleep, that won't happen. And so it will just feed into the adrenals and the thyroid not getting proper care, and proper nourishment and love, in other words. So what can you do? So a couple things that I'm going to mention today are some things you may not have heard of. One thing is eating a healthy diet. You have no idea how much, when you're eating inflammatory foods and crappy foods and processed foods, it can throw your sleep off because it can cause a lot of inflammation, especially with a slow thyroid. When we have a slow thyroid, we need to cut out those inflammatory foods to avoid that. So cutting out things like gluten, sugar, soy, dairy, very, very beneficial, very important when we're struggling with thyroid stuff. And then be very careful with caffeine intake. So it's tough because I know when I struggled with this, I needed caffeine. I could not get through my day otherwise, but that can backfire because over time your body will start realizing like, oh, we have caffeine coming in. So the cortisol gets dysregulated. You end up having too much cortisol later in the day when you shouldn't. That's when it should be low. And then your body will start relying on caffeine in the morning. So it won't even release cortisol in the morning when it's supposed to because it thinks that the caffeine's coming in. So just be very mindful of that. It can actually backfire. And then setting up a sleep schedule. It actually goes a long way when you have a sleep schedule. I know on the weekends can be very different, but like for me, I get up at the same time every single day, just about, during the week. Weekends might be off a little bit, but I try to just keep that sleep schedule. My body gets used to it. And it's so, so important to kind of set up a sleep schedule that's going to work for you. And then movement, of course, is very beneficial as well. And this is something that doesn't get talked much about because a lot of people think, oh, what does movement have to do with sleep? Because when you're moving, you're nourishing your body, you're doing things to get blood flow going. Things like that are going to be very helpful. In the end, by the end of the day, your body can be restful. So it will know, like during the day, this is when we have movement. Nighttime, this is when we have sleep. The other thing is, what is your room like? So making sure your room is dark, making sure it's cool. You know, our body temperatures are supposed to drop down at night, and if we have it too hot in there, that can leave you wide awake as well. The other factor is like my alarm clock. I have a white noise alarm clock. I love having noise in my room, but I make sure it's dimmed and I don't have a TV in my room. I don't have lights on. I keep it very, very dark. Remember, melatonin needs darkness in order to be released. So if it's too bright in your room, you have the blinds open, or the curtains open and you have light coming in that's pretty bright, like even from a street lamp or something like that, it's going to make it hard for melatonin to be released. So it's very helpful when we keep that room really, really dark and cold for that matter. So just keep that in mind. It can be super helpful. And the other thing that I also wanted to mention is be careful even with like supplementation. Sometimes there are supplements that are stimulatory for people at nighttime, and so that will lead them right away. And the tough part with it is when you're kind of blindly guessing like supplement wise, just keep that in mind. If there's something you're taking like later in the day or even in the evening and you're like, maybe that supplement is doing that. Remember, everyone responds differently to supplements. So kind of look at like, what are you taking even at dinner time that might be stimulatory for you, that's keeping you awake as well. So just kind of keep those things in mind as well. These are all things that I talk about with my clients, all things that I personally use myself to kind of make sure I'm winding down at night, make sure I'm getting restful sleep. I know for me, when I really struggled, I battled that a lot, where I was wired but tired. And I started quickly realizing that the more that I really worked on my sleep habits and my sleep hygiene, the better my thyroid was, and vice versa. So definitely let me know if you have questions with that. I'm always happy to chat with you and answer any questions you have on, even how to set up a sleep schedule, things like that. This is all things that I love working with my clients with. So I hope this video helped you, and I will see you on the next one. Bye.